He smiled. "My love, prepare yourself." What the Apache revealed took her breath away. Emily had always been drawn to stories of faraway lands, of places where the past seemed to whisper through the wind, and the earth held memories older than anyone could imagine. From the earliest days of her childhood, she loved books and documentaries about ancient cultures, hidden histories, and the quiet, untold wonders of the world. As she grew older, this curiosity became more than a hobby. It became a calling. She longed not only to read about these places, but to walk through them, feel their air, and witness their beauty with her own eyes. One day, Emily decided that she would travel to the southwestern United States. She had heard tales of the vast deserts, deep canyons, and ancient tribal lands that still carried the spirit of those who had lived there for generations. Among these stories, the Apache people fascinated her most. Their history was filled with resilience, courage, and wisdom, and she wanted to understand them not just as a visitor, but as someone who could listen, observe, and learn. She carefully planned her journey, researching towns that were close to natural wonders and places where Apache traditions were still alive. She wanted to see the land through their eyes, to learn the stories that were often hidden from outsiders. Emily arrived in a small, remote town that seemed untouched by time. The streets were quiet, lined with adobe houses, and the scent of the desert was strong and familiar, even though she had never been there before. She felt as if she had stepped into a different world, one that moved at a slower, more intentional pace. People greeted each other warmly, and the town seemed to hold a secret energy, something sacred yet ordinary at the same time. She rented a small room in a local inn and immediately set out to explore the surrounding landscape. Her first days were spent wandering the canyons, watching how the light shifted over red rock cliffs and how shadows danced in the hollows. She took photographs, sketched some of the views, and wrote in her journal about the peace she felt there. But more than the scenery, she wanted to meet the people who had a connection to the land. She had heard about a few Apache guides in the area, people who knew the history, the stories, and the sacred sites that were rarely shown to outsiders. She didn't know exactly what she was looking for, only that she wanted something real, something that went beyond what books and tour could offer. One afternoon, while exploring a canyon that seemed almost hidden from the main roads, Emily noticed a figure sitting by a small creek. He was tall and lean, with dark hair that fell just above his shoulders, and he had a calm, quiet presence that immediately caught her attention. He seemed to be watching the water carefully, as if he could understand its flow and rhythm. Emily hesitated, unsure if she should approach him, but something about his calmness drew her closer. "Hello," she said softly, not wanting to startle him. He looked up, and for a moment his dark eyes met hers with a mixture of curiosity and warmth. He smiled, not a casual smile, but one that seemed to carry understanding, as if he had been expecting her. "Hello," he replied, his voice deep and steady. "You're not from around here, are you?" Emily shook her head. "No, I'm visiting. I'm curious about the land and the stories it holds." He nodded thoughtfully, brushing some dirt from his hands. "The land always has stories," he said. "If you listen, it will speak to you. Most people pass through too quickly to hear them." His words struck her in a way she had not expected. There was something about his presence that made her feel both calm and alert, like she was on the edge of discovering something important. She introduced herself, and he replied that his name was Ahiok, which meant brave in Apache. There was a quiet confidence in him, but also a gentleness that made Emily feel safe. They began to talk as the sun lowered behind the cliffs. Emily asked him about the canyon, about the stories he might know, and about the people who had lived there long before anyone else. Ahiok listened carefully, and then he began to share, slowly at first, a few small stories about his family, his childhood, and the lessons he had learned from elders. He spoke of the importance of the land, how every rock, tree, and stream had meaning, and how people who respected the earth were able to find balance in life. Emily was captivated. She had read about these ideas in books, but hearing them from someone who lived them, who walked the land every day and carried its wisdom in his heart, was entirely different. There was a sincerity in Ahiok's words that no book could capture. She realized that this encounter was not by chance. There was a feeling that had taken hold in her chest, a sense that something profound was about to unfold. As they walked along the canyon path together, Ahiok pointed out small details that Emily would have missed on her own. A particular formation of rocks that resembled a guardian spirit, a small flower that only bloomed in the shade of a certain cliff, and tracks of animals that had lived in the canyon for generations. Each observation was accompanied by a story, a lesson, or a memory, and Emily soaked it all in. She noticed how he moved through the landscape with ease and respect, never disturbing the earth more than necessary, and she realized how much she had to learn about being truly present in a place. When the sun began to dip below the horizon, Ahiok led her to a small overlook that gave a breathtaking view of the valley below. The sky was painted in shades of orange, pink, and purple, and the canyon seemed alive in a way that Emily could not fully explain. She felt a rush of emotions, wonder, awe, and a sense of humility. Ahiok stood beside her, silent for a moment, simply watching the sky. Then he turned to her and said softly, "There is more to this land than what you see. If you are willing, I can show you something very few people get to witness, something that has been kept for generations." Emily's heart raced. She didn't know what he meant, but the tone in his voice made it clear that this was something important, something sacred. She nodded, her curiosity mixed with a sense of reverence. "I would like that," she said. He smiled then, a quiet, knowing smile that seemed to hold centuries of understanding. "Good," he said. "Then prepare yourself. What you will see may take your breath away, but it is a gift you must respect." The words lingered in Emily's mind long after they left the overlook. She returned to her in that evening with a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation. She could hardly sleep, thinking about what awaited her. She had met many guides and teachers during her travels, but Ahiok was different. He was not just showing her sights or telling stories. He was opening a door to a world she had only imagined. That night, as she lay in bed listening to the quiet sounds of the desert outside her window, Emily reflected on the day. She thought about the connection she felt with Ahiok, the way he moved through the land, and the gentle authority in his voice. She realized that this encounter was about more than sightseeing. It was about learning, understanding, and experiencing life in a deeper way. The canyon, the stories, and the man who had guided her through them had awakened something in her, a sense of wonder, respect, and readiness for what was to come. By the time dawn arrived, Emily felt a mixture of excitement and serenity. She packed lightly, taking only what she would need for a journey into the canyon. As she stepped outside, the cool morning air greeted her, and she felt a sense of possibility. She knew that today could be the start of something extraordinary. She would walk alongside Ahiok, listen to the stories that had been preserved for generations, and witness the secrets of a land that had been kept hidden from most of the world. Emily's heart beat faster as she walked toward the canyon entrance. The rising sun painted the rocks with golden light, and the canyon seemed to welcome her. She knew that whatever happened today would change her, perhaps in ways she could not yet understand. With each step she felt the pull of the land, the weight of its history, and the promise of a revelation that awaited her. When she finally saw Ahiok waiting at a familiar spot, his dark eyes met hers, and he smiled that quiet, knowing smile again. Emily felt a shiver of anticipation run through her. She realized that this was the moment when her journey truly began, the moment when the canyon, the stories, and the wisdom of the Apache would merge to take her on an experience unlike anything she had ever imagined. And in that moment, Emily understood something she could not yet fully express. The world was larger, deeper, and more beautiful than she had ever believed. And with Ahiok guiding her, she was ready to step into it. Emily woke early that morning, the desert air cool and crisp as the sun began to rise over the canyon. The soft light painted the rocks in shades of gold and rose, and she felt an energy she had never experienced before. Her mind was filled with thoughts about the day ahead, about the stories and secrets Ahiok had promised to show her. She dressed quickly and packed a small bag with water, a notebook, and a camera, ready to record whatever she could of this extraordinary experience. When she reached the canyon entrance, Ahiok was already there, standing silently as if he had been waiting for her since the first light of dawn. He greeted her with a smile, calm and reassuring, and gestured for her to follow him. Emily felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as she stepped onto the path he had chosen. The canyon seemed different in the morning light, more alive, more intimate, as if it were aware that a story was about to unfold within its walls. As they began their hike, Ahiok spoke softly about the land around them. He told Emily about the canyon's formation, how the rocks had been shaped over millions of years by wind and water, and how every crevice and cliff held stories of life and survival. But his words were not just scientific, they carried a spiritual meaning. He explained that the land was alive, that it spoke to those who were willing to listen, and that understanding it required patience, humility, and respect. Emily listened closely, absorbing every word. She realized that this was more than a tour. It was a lesson in seeing the world with awareness and reverence. As they walked, Ahiok shared personal stories from his childhood. He spoke of the elders in his community, who had taught him to observe the world quietly, to respect all living things, and to understand that every action has a consequence. He told her about his first journey into the canyon as a young boy, guided by his grandfather, and how he had learned the importance of listening to the wind, the birds, and even the silence between sounds. Emily felt a sense of intimacy in these stories, as though she was being allowed a glimpse into a world few outsiders ever saw. They paused at a small stream where the water trickled over smooth stones. Ahiok knelt beside it, letting his hands touch the cool, clear water. He explained how the stream had been a source of life for generations, providing not just water but also lessons in patience and perseverance. He asked Emily to do the same, to feel the water, to notice its movement, and to reflect on what it could teach her. Emily knelt, placing her hands in the stream, and felt a calmness wash over her. The water was more than just liquid. It was a living connection to the past, a reminder of the continuity of life. As they continued, Emily began to notice the subtle ways Ahiok moved through the canyon. He walked lightly, never disturbing the earth, and his eyes constantly scanned the landscape, noticing details she would have missed entirely. He pointed out tracks of animals, small plants that grew only in shaded areas, and rock formations that had special significance in Apache traditions. Each observation was accompanied by a story or a lesson, and Emily found herself marveling at the depth of his knowledge. She realized that learning from him was not just about facts, it was about perception, awareness, and understanding life on a deeper level. The path began to narrow, winding along the edge of a cliff that overlooked a vast valley. Emily felt a thrill of both fear and awe as she followed Ahiok. The valley stretched endlessly before them, bathed in morning light, with shadows moving slowly over its undulating hills. Ahiok stopped and gestured for her to look carefully. He explained how the land had provided shelter, food, and protection for generations of Apache people, and how every feature of the landscape held meaning and purpose. Emily listened, captivated not only by the beauty of the view but also by the history that seemed to pulse through the earth beneath her feet. After a few minutes, Ahiok turned to her, his expression calm but serious. "There is something I want to show you," he said. His voice carried a weight that made Emily's heart beat faster. It is a place few outsiders ever see. It is sacred and it must be treated with respect. Are you ready? Emily nodded, her excitement mixing with a sense of reverence. She did not fully understand what she was about to witness, but she trusted Ahiok completely. She had felt an unspoken connection to him and to the land, as if they were all part of a larger story unfolding in this moment. They began to descend into a narrow canyon path that led to a hidden area shielded by tall rock walls. The path was challenging, and Emily had to concentrate on her footing, but the anticipation made each step thrilling. Ahiok moved with ease, guiding her carefully and occasionally pointing out details along the way. He spoke of the importance of patience and mindfulness, and Emily realized that even the act of walking itself could become a lesson in awareness if approached with care. Finally, they reached a small plateau that opened into a hidden valley. Emily gasped as she took in the view. The valley was lush with vegetation, a surprising oasis in the midst of the desert, and it seemed untouched by modern life. There were small trees, flowing streams, and a sense of peace that filled the air. Birds sang softly, and the wind carried the scent of wildflowers and earth. Emily felt as if she had stepped into another world, one preserved through centuries of respect and care. Ahiok motioned for her to follow him further into the valley. They walked slowly, and he spoke about the significance of each plant and animal. Some plants were used for healing, others for food, and some had ceremonial importance. Animals were observed carefully and treated with respect, as each played a role in the balance of life. Emily listened intently, realizing that she had never truly considered how interconnected life was before. Every step she took seemed to carry new awareness, and she felt grateful to be learning from someone who lived this philosophy every day. As they approached a cluster of rocks near the center of the valley, Ahiok stopped again. He turned to her, his dark eyes reflecting the morning light, and smiled softly. "Emily," he said, "what you are about to see is something very few people are allowed to witness. It has been preserved for generations, not just as a place, but as a memory, a lesson, and a story. You must remember to respect it, to listen, and to take it into your heart." Emily felt a shiver run through her. She realized that this moment was more than sightseeing. It was an initiation into understanding, a chance to see life through a perspective she had only dreamed of. She nodded, her heart pounding with anticipation, and followed him toward a narrow opening between the rocks. Ahiok paused at the entrance, looking back at her. "Are you ready?" he asked gently. Emily took a deep breath and nodded again. The world beyond the opening seemed to hold a mystery, something ancient and powerful, waiting for her to step inside. She could feel the weight of history and the quiet reverence in the air. Every instinct told her that this was a moment that could change her, and she felt both nervous and exhilarated. As they stepped into the opening, Emily noticed the walls were covered in markings, faded but intricate. Symbols and pictographs adorned the rocks, telling stories she could not yet fully understand. Ahiok explained that these were messages from ancestors, lessons written in a language older than most civilizations. Each mark held meaning, teaching about life, courage, respect, and harmony with the earth. Emily felt overwhelmed by the depth of what she was seeing. She had studied history and anthropology, but nothing had prepared her for the direct encounter with a culture so alive and intentional in its preservation. Ahiok's voice guided her through the space, explaining the significance of certain symbols, the stories they told, and the traditions they represented. Emily listened with rapt attention, feeling as if time had slowed. Every detail mattered, the curves of the lines, the placement of the symbols, and the way the light fell upon them. She realized that this was not just about seeing history, it was about feeling it, connecting with it, and understanding its lessons. Time seemed to pass differently in that sacred place. Emily lost track of minutes, hours, and even the world outside the valley. All that existed was the space, the stories, and the presence of Ahiok, who moved with respect and care, never rushing, always observing. Emily began to understand that the journey itself, the walk through the canyon, the observation of nature, and the sharing of stories, was just as important as what they had come to see. It was a preparation, a slow unfolding of awareness and connection. Finally, they emerged from the hidden valley as the sun reached its peak. Emily felt a sense of fulfillment, awe, and curiosity all at once. She realized that she had been given a gift, a glimpse into a world that had been preserved through respect, patience, and wisdom. She turned to Ahiok, whose calm smile reflected both understanding and pride. "Thank you," she said softly. "I don't know how to describe what I feel." He nodded gently. "You will understand more as you reflect," he said. "The land teaches those who listen. The stories stay with you, and one day you will see their meaning clearly. But for now, carry them with respect and gratitude." Emily felt a quiet joy fill her chest. She knew that this day was only the beginning of a journey that would change her perspective on life, nature, and herself. The lessons she had received were not just stories, they were experiences, alive and breathing in her memory. As they walked back toward the canyon entrance, she felt a deep sense of connection, to Ahiok, to the land, and to the timeless wisdom that had been entrusted to her. Emily's heart was still racing from the morning's journey. She had walked through the hidden canyon, listened to the flowing streams, and absorbed the teachings Ahiok had shared. Yet there was a feeling that something extraordinary was still waiting, something that would transform not only her understanding of the land, but also the way she viewed life itself. As she followed Ahiok along the narrow canyon path, she could feel a quiet anticipation building inside her. Every step felt like moving closer to a secret that had been kept safe for generations. Ahiok moved with a calm confidence, his eyes scanning the rocks and the earth as if he were reading messages left by the land itself. Emily tried to match his attentiveness, noticing every detail. The way a small lizard paused on a sunlit rock, the delicate patterns in the sand left by desert winds, and the distant echo of birdsong. The canyon felt alive, and she began to understand what Ahiok had meant when he said the land could speak. It had its own language, and those who truly listened could hear it in subtle ways. After a while, they came to a narrow passage between two towering rock walls. Ahiok paused and turned to Emily, his expression serious but gentle. "We are close," he said quietly. "What you will see has been preserved for many generations. Few have been allowed to enter, and it carries lessons that go beyond words. Are you ready to step inside?" Emily nodded, her throat tight with anticipation. She felt both nervous and excited, knowing that this moment would be unlike anything she had ever experienced. Ahiok smiled slightly, the same calm, knowing smile that had drawn her trust since the first day. He led her carefully through the passage, and as they emerged on the other side, Emily gasped. Before her lay a hidden cave, carved into the rock so naturally that it seemed to have grown from the earth itself. The entrance was wide, yet shadowed, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of earth, stone, and a hint of something ancient and sacred. Emily's breath caught in her chest. She had seen caves before, of course, but nothing like this. It was more than a physical space. It was a living testament to history, memory, and reverence. Ahiok motioned for her to step inside slowly. The interior was larger than it appeared from the outside, and the walls were covered in pictographs and symbols. Some were simple, others intricate, but all seemed to tell stories of people, animals, spirits, and the land itself. The colors were faded but still vivid in the morning light streaming through small openings in the cave. Emily walked cautiously, her fingers hovering near the walls but never touching, afraid to disturb what had been preserved for so long. "These markings," Ahiok began softly, "are lessons from our ancestors. Each one has meaning. They teach courage, patience, respect, and love for life. They remind us of the bond we share with the earth and with each other. Few outsiders ever see them because they carry teachings that must be understood, not just looked at. Emily nodded, her eyes scanning the walls. She felt a mixture of awe and humility. She realized that this cave was not just art or history, it was a living memory, a bridge between generations. Every symbol, every line seemed to pulse with life. She could sense the hands that had drawn them, the stories whispered as they worked, and the hope that these lessons would survive the passage of time. Ahiok walked alongside her, pointing out details that she might have missed. He explained that some symbols represented journeys, physical, emotional, and spiritual. Others represented the seasons, cycles of life, or the animals that shared the land with the Apache people. Emily felt a deep respect for the intelligence and sensitivity embedded in every marking. She began to see the cave not just as a place, but as a teacher, offering guidance to those willing to pay attention. Then, Ahiok spoke more personally. "I was chosen by my elders to protect this cave," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "It is a responsibility, not just a duty. By showing it to you, I am trusting you with part of our world. You must promise to carry its lessons with respect and gratitude." Emily felt a wave of emotion she could hardly describe. She realized the depth of what Ahiok was sharing, not just the cave, but a piece of his life, his family, and his culture. She nodded earnestly, her heart full. "I promise," she said softly, "I will honor it." They walked deeper into the cave, and Emily noticed a small alcove where the pictographs were even more detailed. Ahiok explained that this section depicted the history of a particular Apache family, their struggles, victories, and lessons learned. Emily could almost feel the lives of those who had come before, their presence lingering in the air. It was as if time itself had folded inside the cave, connecting past, present, and future. For hours they explored the space. Ahiok shared stories of each symbol, explaining how they related to courage, community, and the balance between humans and nature. Emily listened intently, occasionally taking notes in her notebook, but mostly allowing herself to absorb the experience fully. She realized that understanding these lessons required more than observation. It required reflection, patience, and openness. As they paused near the deepest part of the cave, Ahiok turned to Emily with a soft smile. "This is the heart of the cave," he said. "Here, our ancestors recorded their most important lessons. Look carefully. See what they are trying to teach." Emily approached the wall and felt a profound sense of stillness. The symbols seemed alive in a way she could not explain. She noticed patterns that suggested cycles of life, the importance of respect for all beings, and the courage required to face challenges. She realized that the lessons were not only for the Apache people, but for anyone willing to listen, anyone willing to open their heart. Ahiok watched her quietly, giving her space to reflect. After a few moments, he spoke again. "These teachings are not just history, they are guidance for life. They remind us that every choice matters, that every action has a ripple effect, and that love and respect are the foundations of a good life. Carry these lessons with you, and they will guide you wherever you go." Emily felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She had never experienced anything like this before. It was not just a lesson in history or culture, it was a lesson in life itself. She felt grateful for the trust Ahiok had placed in her, and she realized that this experience would stay with her forever. After a long moment of silence, they began to walk back toward the cave entrance. Emily's mind was full of thoughts, images, and feelings she could barely describe. She understood that she had been given a rare gift, the opportunity to witness history, culture, and wisdom preserved in a sacred space. She also understood that she had a responsibility to honor what she had seen, to carry it forward with respect and care. As they emerged from the cave, the sunlight felt almost blinding after the dim interior. Emily shielded her eyes, taking a deep breath of the fresh desert air. She felt both overwhelmed and exhilarated, as if she had stepped out of one world and into another. The canyon, the valley, and the sky seemed more vibrant, more alive, and she realized that her perception of the world had shifted. Ahiok stood beside her, calm and steady. "How do you feel?" he asked softly. Emily struggled to find words. I feel honored," she said finally. "And changed. I didn't realize how much a place could teach, not just about history but about life." Ahiok nodded, a gentle smile touching his lips. "That is the lesson. The land, the stories, and the symbols are teachers. They remind us of who we are, where we come from, and how we should live. Keep these lessons with you, and they will guide you always." They sat together on a large rock overlooking the hidden valley. The sun was high now, casting light across the landscape, and Emily felt a deep sense of peace. She reflected on everything she had experienced: the walk through the canyon, the streams, the plants and animals, the cave, and the stories Ahiok had shared. She realized that this journey was about more than seeing beautiful places or learning facts. It was about connection to the land, to history, and to the wisdom of people who had lived in harmony with their surroundings. Emily also thought about Ahiok, about his calm strength, his patience, and the generosity of spirit that allowed him to share such a sacred part of his life with her. She felt a profound respect for him, not just as a guide, but as a keeper of history, tradition, and wisdom. She realized that trust and respect were at the heart of this experience, and she vowed silently to honor them in every way she could. As they prepared to leave the valley and return to the main canyon path, Emily felt a quiet excitement. She knew that the experience in the cave was only one part of her journey. There was more to learn, more to see, and more to understand. But she also knew that what she had witnessed today would remain with her forever, shaping the way she thought, felt, and lived. For Emily, the revelation was not just about seeing a hidden cave or ancient symbols. It was about awakening to a deeper understanding of life itself, the importance of respect, the power of connection, and the wisdom that comes from listening to the world around us. She realized that moments like these were rare, and that she had been given a gift that few ever receive. Ahiok smiled at her one last time before they began their walk back. "Remember," he said gently, "these lessons are yours to carry, but they are not meant to end here. Live them, share them, but always with respect." Emily nodded, feeling the weight and beauty of his words. She understood that this experience was transformative, and she felt grateful beyond words. As they walked through the canyon, she glanced back at the hidden cave, knowing that it would always be a part of her, a place she could carry in her heart wherever she went. By the time they reached the edge of the canyon, Emily felt a quiet sense of completion. She had seen, learned, and felt more in these hours than she had in months of travel. But she also felt that her journey was not over. There were still lessons to learn, still discoveries to make, and still the presence of Ahiok's wisdom to guide her. And as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, Emily knew that her life had changed. She would never see the world in the same way again. The cave, the symbols, the land, and the man who had guided her had opened her heart and mind to a world of understanding, respect, and awe. She felt ready for whatever came next, knowing that the lessons she had received would continue to shape her, inspire her, and guide her for years to come. As the sun rose higher in the sky, Emily felt a quiet, profound sense of peace. The journey through the canyon, the streams, and the hidden cave had changed her in ways she was only beginning to understand. She walked slowly beside Ahiok, noticing the subtle ways the light played across the canyon walls, casting long shadows that danced with the movement of the wind. Each step she took felt lighter, as if the weight of worry and distraction she had carried for so long had been lifted by the land, the stories, and the wisdom she had absorbed. Ahiok moved beside her with his usual calm confidence, his eyes scanning the path ahead, but occasionally he glanced at her with a quiet smile that seemed to say, He understood the transformation she was experiencing. "How do you feel?" he asked softly, breaking the silence that had followed their long walk. Emily paused for a moment, looking out over a stretch of the canyon where the sunlight reflected off the rocks in gold and orange hues. "I feel different," she said slowly, searching for the right words. "I feel like I've seen more than just a place. I've seen lessons, history, and life itself. I feel connected to the land, to the people, and even to myself in a way I never have before." Ahiok nodded, understanding shining in his eyes. "That is the gift of this land," he said. "It is not just the view or the rocks or the water. It is the lessons they hold. It is the understanding that life is more than the moment you see. It is the wisdom carried across generations, waiting for someone to listen and learn." They walked in silence for a while, the only sounds being the occasional call of a bird or the crunch of sand beneath their feet. Emily allowed herself to reflect on the cave, on the pictographs, and on the trust Ahiok had placed in her by sharing such a sacred place. She felt a mixture of gratitude and humility. She knew that few outsiders would ever be allowed to see what she had seen, and that recognition filled her with a quiet reverence. As they reached a small plateau overlooking the canyon floor, Ahiok stopped and gestured for Emily to sit beside him on a flat rock. The view was breathtaking. Below them, the canyon spread wide and vast, its colors shifting with the morning light. Streams wound through the valley like silver ribbons, and the gentle rustle of leaves and distant calls of animals created a natural symphony that was both calming and invigorating. Emily felt as if she could sit there forever, absorbing the beauty and the lessons that seemed to float in the air around her. Ahiok spoke again, his voice steady and thoughtful. "What you have seen is more than history or tradition. It is a guide for life. The land, the stories, and the symbols teach us to observe, to respect, and to live with intention. The cave you saw is a reflection of this understanding. It is not meant to remain hidden forever, but it is not for everyone. Only those who are ready, only those who are willing to learn with humility can truly understand it." Emily nodded, feeling the depth of his words. "I think I understand," she said softly. "It is not just a place. It is a teacher, and the lessons are meant to guide how we live." Ahiok smiled, his gaze moving from her to the canyon below. "Exactly. And now it is up to you to carry these lessons forward. Not as words to be repeated, but as actions, choices, and ways of seeing the world. Respect the land, respect others, and live with awareness. These are the principles that have guided my people for generations." Emily felt a sense of clarity she had never experienced before. The journey, the cave, and Ahiok's guidance had shown her that life could be approached differently, slower, more intentional, and with a focus on connection rather than distraction. She realized that she had spent much of her life rushing, seeing but not truly observing, and acting without full awareness of the consequences. Now, she felt the possibility of living differently, guided by the lessons she had witnessed. They sat together for some time, watching the play of light across the canyon and listening to the subtle sounds of life around them. Emily felt a quiet gratitude for Ahiok, not just for showing her the hidden cave, but for guiding her through a deeper understanding of herself and the world. She recognized that the wisdom he shared was not just knowledge, it was a way of life, a philosophy carried through generations and preserved through patience, respect, and care. As they began their walk back toward the main path of the canyon, Emily reflected on how much she had changed in just a few days. The awe she had felt at the canyon's beauty now carried a new dimension, understanding. She could see the land not just as scenery, but as a living, breathing teacher. She could see the animals, plants, and water as part of a delicate balance that demanded respect, and she could see herself as a participant in that balance, responsible for her actions and choices. Ahiok spoke quietly as they walked, pointing out small details along the path that Emily had missed on the first day. A certain flower growing in a shaded nook, the tracks of a fox weaving across the sand, a bird nesting in the crook of a tree. Each detail carried meaning, and Emily felt her awareness sharpening. She realized that life could be lived with this level of attention, and that even small observations could teach great lessons if approached with care. When they reached the edge of the canyon and the town beyond, Emily felt a mixture of relief and reluctance. She was returning to the world she had known, but she knew she would never see it in the same way again. She turned to Ahiok, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything. I don't know how to explain it, but this experience, it has changed me." Ahiok smiled, a quiet, knowing smile that carried centuries of wisdom. "You have learned what you were ready to learn," he said. "But remember, this is only the beginning. The lessons will continue, as long as you carry them in your heart and let them guide your actions. Life is a journey, Emily, and every moment is an opportunity to live with respect, awareness, and courage." Emily nodded, feeling the weight and beauty of his words. She realized that this encounter was more than a trip to a canyon or a visit to a hidden cave. It was a turning point in her life, a moment that would influence how she saw the world and herself. She understood that the lessons she had received were timeless, and that by honoring them, she could live more fully, more consciously, and more compassionately. As she prepared to leave the canyon and return to the town, Emily took a final look at the landscape that had given her so much. The rocks, streams, and valleys were no longer just scenery. They were teachers, keepers of wisdom, and reminders of the interconnectedness of life. She felt a profound respect for the land and its people, and she vowed silently to honor that respect in everything she did. Walking back through the streets of the small town, Emily felt a quiet sense of transformation. The people around her, the shops, and the streets all seemed part of a larger story she could now understand more clearly. She realized that her journey was not about escaping her old life, but about returning to it with new eyes and a deeper understanding. She could approach her work, relationships, and everyday life with the mindfulness, respect, and awareness she had learned from Ahiok and the canyon. That evening, Emily sat by her window, writing in her journal. She recorded every detail of the journey, the cave, and the lessons she had received. But more importantly, she reflected on the feelings that had stayed with her, the awe, the humility, the sense of connection, and the gratitude. She realized that these emotions were just as important as the visual experiences, because they would guide her in moments when she needed clarity, courage, or understanding. As night fell over the town, Emily felt a quiet contentment she had never known. The stars above seemed brighter and more numerous than anywhere she had ever been, and she felt a connection to something greater than herself. She thought of Ahiok and the trust he had placed in her, and she felt honored to carry a part of his wisdom and culture forward. She understood that this experience was a gift, one that would stay with her for the rest of her life, guiding her choices, shaping her perspective, and reminding her of the beauty and responsibility of life. Emily knew that the canyon and the cave were not just places she had visited, they were part of her now. The lessons she had learned would continue to grow within her, shaping her thoughts, her actions, and her understanding of the world. She felt ready to face whatever challenges and opportunities lay ahead, carrying the wisdom of the land, the stories of the ancestors, and the guidance of Ahiok with her. And as she finally closed her journal and looked out at the quiet desert night, Emily smiled. She felt a sense of completion, of transformation, and of gratitude that filled every part of her being. She knew that this journey was only the beginning of a life lived with awareness, respect, and connection, a life guided by the lessons of the canyon, the cave, and the wisdom that had been shared with her. In that moment, Emily understood the true meaning of what Ahiok had said when he first smiled and told her to prepare herself. She had been prepared in ways she could not have imagined, and the revelation she had received had indeed taken her breath away. But it was more than awe, it was transformation. She was no longer simply a traveler passing through the land. She was a witness, a learner, and a keeper of the lessons she had been entrusted with. With that understanding, Emily felt ready to continue her journey, not just through the desert or the canyons, but through life itself. She carried the lessons of the Apache, the wisdom of Ahiok, and the sacredness of the land within her, knowing that they would guide her forever. And as she drifted into a peaceful sleep that night, the stars shining brightly overhead, she knew she had been forever changed.